my daughter's fiancé, pushed me in the chest and yelled, "Get lost, you old fool!" He didn't know I was her father. At that moment, my daughter came out onto the porch, gave him an icy stare, and said quietly but chillingly, "You're finished." And his perfect life began to crumble right then and there. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. Sarah's BMW sat crooked in my driveway, one wheel on the grass edging. Not like her. She was the one who color-coded case files and arrived 15 minutes early to every appointment. I watched from my study window as she climbed out, smoothing her skirt with both hands, staring at my front door like it might bite. "Come in, honey," I called when she finally rang the bell. "Doors open?" She stepped inside, and I noticed immediately the tension in her shoulders, the way her purse strap twisted around her fingers. Late afternoon light slanted through the study windows, catching dust motes that danced between us as we hugged. "Coffee?" I asked. "Sure, yes. Coffee would be great." I'd been about to offer bourbon, our usual Saturday ritual, when she stopped by, but something in her expression made me pivot. In the kitchen, I ground beans while she stood in the doorway, not quite entering, not quite leaving. Back in the study, I cleared blueprints from the corner of my mahogany desk. Another historic renovation project, this one a crumbling antebellum mansion on Trad Street. The owner wanted modern amenities hidden behind preserved facades. Tricky work I loved. Sarah took the coffee but didn't drink, just held the cup, letting steam curl around her face. "So," I said, settling into my leather chair, "what brings you by on a Saturday? Case prep?" "No, actually." She set the cup down on a coaster, adjusted it again. "I wanted to ask you something. Would it be okay if Brandon joined us for Thanksgiving?" "Of course. I've been hoping to spend more time with him. Why wouldn't it be okay?" Her gaze drifted to the window. The live oak in my side yard was losing leaves, branches scratching against the glass whenever wind picked up. "I just wanted to make sure. You know how you value our family traditions." "Sarah, he's going to be family soon. I want him to feel welcome here. This is his home, too." She looked back at me then, something flickering behind her eyes. "You always see the best in people, Dad." "Is there something I should be concerned about?" No. The brightness in her voice was forced, artificial. "Just wedding stress. You know how it is." I didn't, actually. Her mother and I had married at City Hall with 2 witnesses and dinner at a pizza joint afterward. Best day of my life. But I nodded, took a sip of my own coffee, let the silence stretch until she filled it. "Have you 2 settled on a date yet?" "Next summer, July probably. Brandon wants something big, elegant venue, 200 guests. And what do you want?" She paused, cup halfway to her lips. "I want whatever makes sense." Strange answer. Not, "I want what he wants," or "I want something intimate." Just whatever makes sense, like a calculation, not a dream. "Listen," I said, leaning forward. "I've been thinking about wedding gifts. Your mother and I always planned to help you with a house down payment when the time came. I know Charleston real estate is insane right now, but Dad, you don't have to. I want to. You're all I've got, honey. Let me do this." Her eyes went glassy. She blinked fast, looked away. "Thank you." We talked for another 20 minutes. Surface things. Her latest case, a corporate merger dispute. My Trad Street project. The weather. All the while, I watched her fingers fidget with the coffee cup handle, twisting the ceramic back and forth. She'd done that as a kid when something worried her. Before piano recitals. Before the SATs. Before telling me she'd crashed my car into a mailbox at 16. When she finally stood to leave, I walked her to the door, then followed her out to the driveway. The November air had teeth. I put my hand on her shoulder, meaning to say something reassuring, something fatherly. She leaned into the touch, held there for 3 seconds longer than usual. "Thanks for being so understanding, Dad." "Understanding about what?" She opened her car door, Just everything. See you Thursday. I watched her back out, correct the angle, drive away with her usual precision restored. The taillights disappeared around the corner onto Meeting Street, and I stood there in my driveway while the afternoon leaked into evening. Inside, I moved through the house turning on lights. Old habit. I hated coming home to darkness. The place was too big for one person, really. 3 stories of Charleston single house, 14-foot ceilings, rooms I barely used anymore. But it was mine. Built in 1847, renovated by me over 15 years. Every floorboard, every window, every piece of crown molding had passed through my hands. I paused in the dining room. Next Thursday, this table would seat 3 instead of 2. Brandon Mitchell. I'd met him twice. Once at the engagement party Sarah threw at her apartment. Once for a quick lunch downtown where he'd spent half the meal on his phone. Real estate developer. Confident. Successful from what Sarah said. In my study, I pulled out my phone and texted her. Looking forward to Thursday. It'll be good to really talk. Her response came within seconds. Me too, Dad. Thank you for understanding. That word again. Understanding. I stared at the message, then set the phone down and returned to my blueprints. But the lines wouldn't focus. The measurements blurred. Outside my window, the live oak branches kept scratching against the glass. The turkey had been in the oven since morning, filling the house with the smell of rosemary and butter. I'd set the dining table with the good china, white porcelain with delicate blue edging that had belonged to Catherine. Hadn't used it in 3 years. The crystal glasses caught afternoon light from the bay windows, throwing small rainbows across the tablecloth. By 3:30, I'd changed into pressed slacks and a charcoal button-down, checked my reflection in the hall mirror. 62 years old, mostly gray, but I still had my hair and most of my teeth. Good enough? The doorbell rang at 4 exactly. Sarah came in first, wearing a burgundy dress I'd never seen before. Behind her, Brandon Mitchell emerged from her BMW like he was stepping onto a stage. Navy suit that probably cost $3,000. Hair styled with product that caught the light. And the watch, I noticed it immediately. Rolex. The kind you saw in magazine ads featuring yachts and helicopters. Russell! He extended his hand, gripped mine hard enough to make a point. Great to finally have a real conversation. Sarah talks about you constantly. All good things, I hope. Welcome. Come in, please. He moved through my entryway with appraising eyes, taking in the restored heart pine floors, the original plasterwork, the curved staircase leading up to the second floor. Beautiful place. Must be worth, what, $800,000 in this market? Sarah's hand tightened on her purse strap. I don't really think about it that way, I said. It's home. In the dining room, I carved the turkey with the bone-handled knife my father had given me 40 years ago. Precise cuts, the way he'd taught me. I served Brandon first, guest of honor, and watched him take the plate without a word of thanks. Dinner began civilly enough. We talked about the weather, the traffic on I-26, the Charleston restaurant scene. Then Brandon found his rhythm. I've got a deal pending that'll change everything, he announced, gesturing with his fork. The silver came within an inch of Sarah's wineglass. She caught the stem reflexively, steadied it, set it down carefully. Premium waterfront development, 50 units, starting at $1.2 million each. That's ambitious, I said, passing the sweet potato casserole. Do you have the financing in place? Almost there. Banks love me. He grinned, showing perfectly white teeth. And once I land the historic district contract, everything falls into place. I paused, serving spoon in midair. Historic district? I thought you didn't value old architecture. I value money. Historic designation means tax credits. He took a large bite of turkey, chewed while he talked. Charleston's sitting on untapped potential. These old buildings, sure, they're pretty, but they're not optimized. You could fit 3 modern townhomes where one historic house sits. But then you lose what makes Charleston special, I said, keeping my voice level. The character, the history. Character doesn't pay mortgages. Progress does. Sarah set her fork down. Some things are worth more than profit margins. Brandon reached over and patted her hand like she was a child. Babe, you're too sentimental? That's why you're a lawyer, not a developer. The table went quiet, except for the scrape of silverware on china. I watched Sarah withdraw into herself, shoulders curving inward. She picked at her green beans, moving them around her plate without eating. Brandon filled the silence by talking about his company, Mitchell Properties, and the deals he had lined up for next year. Luxury condos, waterfront parcels, a partnership with a firm in Myrtle Beach. Every sentence included a dollar figure. Every story positioned him as the smartest person in the room. When Sarah tried to mention a preservation case she was working on, he cut her off. Babe, they don't want to hear about work. My jaw tightened. I bit down on a response. Not my place. Not yet. She was 30 years old, a junior partner at a prestigious firm. If she wanted to handle this, she would. Halfway through the meal, Brandon excused himself. Sorry, important email. Work never stops. He wandered into the front parlor, phone in hand. Through the doorway, I could see him scrolling. Not email. Social media. Instagram, from the way his thumb moved. Sarah and I cleared plates in silence. In the kitchen, she scraped leftovers into containers, without meeting my eyes. He's stressed about the waterfront deal, she said quietly. I didn't respond. Didn't need to. She knew what I was thinking. Back at the table, Brandon returned and launched into another story. This one involved outbidding a competitor for a property in Mount Pleasant. He smiled when he described how the other developer nearly cried when the contract fell through. By the time I brought out the pumpkin pie, my patience had worn thin. But I smiled, played the gracious host, poured coffee. Sarah volunteered to cut the dessert in the kitchen, escaping again. Brandon checked his phone. Again. The screen lit his face in blue-white light. Sorry, he said without looking up. Client? I stood, folded my napkin. No problem. I need to grab my phone from the car myself. Got a message earlier about a Monday meeting. I'll be right back. Brandon nodded, barely registering my words. In the front hall, I reached for my blazer, then stopped. It was cold outside, November night settling in, and the blazer was thin. I opened the closet and grabbed my canvas work jacket instead. Faded khaki, paint-stained from job sites. The one I wore when inspecting renovations. Warm, practical. I shrugged into it, pulled the collar up, and stepped outside. The street was darker than I expected. Gas street lamps cast pools of amber light every 30 feet, but between them shadows pooled thick. My car sat at the curb, driver's side facing away. I walked down the brick path, hands in my jacket pockets. Just another figure in old clothes moving through the Charleston evening. Behind me, inside the house, I heard Sarah's voice from the kitchen, humming something while she worked. The sound faded as I reached the sidewalk, 30 feet to the car. I fished for my keys. The November air smelled like wood smoke and the salt marsh, 2 blocks east. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. A car alarm chirped as someone locked their vehicle. I pulled out my keys, pressed the unlock button. The interior light flickered on, illuminating the empty driver's seat where my phone waited. My phone screen glowed in the car's interior. 2 missed messages from Gerald Patterson about Monday's meeting. The historic courthouse renovation had hit a snag with the marble supplier. I'd deal with it tomorrow. I was about to close the door when I heard footsteps behind me. Deliberate, confident, the kind of walk that announced ownership of space. Hey, old man, step away from that car. I turned, confused. Brandon stood 15 feet away, a leather cigar case in one hand, smoke curling from something expensive between his fingers. The street lamp flickered above us, throwing his face into alternating light and shadow. Excuse me. The BMW. He gestured with the cigar, ash falling onto the brick sidewalk. That's my girlfriend's car, and I don't want people like you hanging around it. People like me. I looked down at my canvas jacket, paint-stained and faded, looked back up at his $3,000 suit. I don't care what you were doing. Move along. The smell of his cigar reached me. Cuban, illegal, expensive. The kind of detail that told you everything about someone's relationship with rules. You don't understand. He stepped closer, invading the space between us with practiced aggression. I understand perfectly. You see expensive cars, you get ideas. Not on my watch. My heart kicked harder, not from fear, from the sheer absurdity of being mistaken for a threat on my own street. Young man, you're making a mistake. The only mistake is you still standing here. He was 3 feet away now, close enough that I could see the glint of his Rolex catching streetlight, close enough to smell bourbon on his breath mixing with cigar smoke. I opened my mouth to explain, to tell him who I was, to diffuse this ridiculous confrontation before it escalated further. Then his hands hit my chest. The shove wasn't violent exactly, but it was forceful, deliberate. My shoulders struck the car behind me. My phone slipped from my grip, clattered onto the brick. The sound echoed down the empty street. You hear me, old fool? His voice carried the sharp satisfaction of someone asserting dominance. Get lost before I call security. I steadied myself against the car, breath coming shorter. There is no security. This is a residential. Then I'll handle it myself. You want me to... Brandon. One word. Ice cold, cutting through the November air like a blade. He spun toward the voice. I looked past him to the house. Sarah stood at the top of the brick steps, frozen. 2 dessert plates in her hands, my late wife's china. White with delicate blue edging, her face held an expression I'd never seen before. Not anger, something colder, something final. Sarah, baby, there was this guy. That's my father. The plates slipped from her hands. They hit the brick steps and exploded into white fragments. The sound punctuated her words like a judge's gavel. Brandon's face drained of color. Actually drained. I watched the blood leave his cheeks, his lips, watched him transform from aggressive to desperate in the space between heartbeats. What? No, I didn't. The jacket. I couldn't see. You pushed my father. Her voice remained flat, controlled. The attorney speaking, not the daughter. You called him a fool. I didn't know. How could I know? He was dressed like... Like what, Brandon? She descended 1 step, just one. Like someone you can treat like trash? He moved toward the stairs, hands raised in supplication. The cigar still burned between his fingers. He hadn't dropped it, hadn't even noticed he still held it. Please, Sarah. Let me explain. She looked at him for a long moment. I watched her face in the porch light, saw something shift behind her eyes. A decision made, a door closing. You're finished. 2 words, delivered with surgical precision. Then she turned, not quickly, with mechanical precision. 1 foot, then the other. She walked back through my front door and disappeared into the house's interior, leaving the door standing open behind her, a gesture of dismissal more powerful than slamming it. Brandon stood paralyzed on the walkway, his mouth opened and closed. Sounds came out, fragments of words, half-formed protests. Baby, wait, we can... Russell, sir, I apologize. I said nothing, just stood against my car, phone still on the ground at my feet, watching him unravel in the flickering streetlight. He took a step toward the house, stopped, looked back at me. His face held the expression of someone realizing they'd stepped off a cliff and were only now understanding the fall. The November wind picked up. Leaves skittered across the brick. Somewhere down the street, that dog barked again. Brandon turned and walked to his car, a black Mercedes parked behind Sarah's BMW. His movements were mechanical, disconnected. He got in. Sat there for 30 seconds, not starting the engine. Then the taillights flared red, and he pulled away from the curb. I watched until his car disappeared around the corner onto Meeting Street. Then I bent down slowly and picked up my phone. The screen had cracked, a spiderweb pattern radiating from the impact point. Inside the house, lights burned warm against the darkness. Broken china littered my front steps. I climbed them carefully, stepping around the fragments, and went inside to find my daughter. Dawn came gray and cold. I woke at 6, the house silent except for the old furnace rumbling to life. In the kitchen, I found Sarah's car already in my driveway. She sat at the kitchen table, wrapped in the plaid blanket from my living room couch, staring at her phone. Her dinner dress from yesterday looked crumpled, slept in. Her eyes were red but dry. I poured coffee without asking, set a mug in front of her, took the chair across from hers. Neither of us spoke. The kitchen clock ticked. Outside, Charleston woke up. Delivery trucks on distant streets, a siren wailing toward the hospital 3 blocks over. How long have you been here? Since 5. I couldn't stay at my place. His toothbrush is in my bathroom. I wrapped my hands around my own mug, feeling the warmth seep into my palms. You're welcome here as long as you need. I should have seen it sooner, Dad. The signs were there. She pulled a yellow legal pad from her bag, the kind she used for case notes. Dates, locations, witnesses, the attorney building her case. Last month, he screamed at a parking attendant. Her voice was steady, professional. Called him incompetent, stupid, worthless. The man just stood there, taking it. I told myself Brandon was stressed about work. That's not stress. That's character. I know. She looked up at me. I'm an attorney. I deal with abusive personalities constantly. But I made excuses for him, because I wanted to believe in who I thought he was. That's human. You loved who he pretended to be. We moved to my study an hour later. She showed me her timeline. August 15th. Restaurant on King Street. Rude to the waitress. Left a 5% tip after the woman forgot his water refill. September 3rd. Charity gala. Mocked donors he considered beneath his social class. October 10th. The parking attendant incident. November 27th. Shoved her father in the street. The pattern was clear, escalating, each incident worse than the last. I need evidence, Sarah said, setting down the legal pad. Documentation of his pattern before I break the engagement publicly. Otherwise it looks personal, emotional. My firm has high-profile clients who value stability. What kind of evidence? Professional misconduct, business ethics violations, something that shows this wasn't about one bad night. It's who he is. I leaned back in my chair. Through the window, morning light caught the live oak branches, making shadows dance across my desk. I can help with that. At 2 in the afternoon, Brandon's messages started. Sarah's phone buzzed on my desk where she'd left it. She reached for it reflexively. I put my hand over hers. Let me see it first. The screen showed a text. I'm so sorry. I didn't recognize him in the dark. Please let me explain. 10 minutes later, Sarah, answer your phone. We need to talk about this. 20 minutes after that, you're being unreasonable. It was an honest mistake. By 7 o'clock, there were 23 texts, 14 missed calls. I watched Sarah read through them, her expression hardening with each message. Listen to this, she said. You're overreacting. It was dark. Anyone would have made the same mistake. He's rewriting the narrative. Here's another. Your father was dressed like a vagrant. How was I supposed to know? Notice he's not apologizing for the behavior, just for getting caught. When his 15th call came through, I reached over and held down the power button until the phone went dark. Sarah looked at me, surprised. You need space to think, and he needs to understand silence. Relief washed across her face. She nodded. At 7 exactly, I heard a car pull up outside. I moved to the study window, staying back from the glass. Brandon's Mercedes. He climbed out, strode up my walkway with manufactured confidence. Then he was at my door, pressing the bell. Once, twice, 5 times in rapid succession. I watched him through the sheer curtains. His suit was wrinkled, same clothes as yesterday, his hair less carefully styled. He cupped his hands around his face, peering through the sidelight windows. After 5 minutes, his posture changed, shoulders sagging, hands dropping to his sides. He turned, walked halfway down the path, then spun back and jabbed the doorbell 3 more times. Nothing. As he left, he kicked the bottom porch step. A small violence. The impact echoed in the quiet street. I watched his taillights disappear, then headed downstairs to my workshop. The basement had been my thinking space for 40 years. Walls lined with blueprints, every building I'd designed, every restoration I'd overseen. The physical record of a career spent creating things that would outlast me. I cleared my drafting table and pulled out a yellow legal pad. At the top, in careful block letters, Mitchell Properties. My laptop took a moment to boot up. Then I opened the Charleston County Public Records database. Business licenses, property transactions, building permits. Brandon's company had been active for 6 years. 15 development projects completed, 3 currently in progress, and 1 pending. The Historic District redevelopment contract. The job he'd mentioned at dinner, the one with tax credits attached. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts. Patricia Coleman. We'd served together on the Historic Preservation Board for 15 years. She answered on the second ring. Russell? Bit late for a social call. I need your discretion. Brandon Mitchell, what's his reputation among the Preservation Board? Silence for a beat. Then, that's the young developer bidding on the Historic District project. Russell, between us, there have been complaints. Aggressive behavior in meetings. He treated a city inspector rudely last month. The Historic District contract, when is that decided? Next week. Board meeting Wednesday. Why are you asking? Just doing some research. Thanks, Patricia. I hung up before she could press further. Next call, James Whitfield, a contact at First Charleston Bank. We'd worked together on commercial loans for restoration projects. James, quick question. Mitchell Properties, are they leveraged right now? His answer came carefully. Russell, you know I can't discuss client finances. Hypothetically, a pause. Hypothetically, most developers that size carry significant debt. Construction loans, property acquisitions, they're usually one deal away from either expansion or trouble. One deal? One deal. Third call, Richard Shaw, City Planning Commission. We played golf twice a year and complained about zoning codes over bourbon. Richard, the Historic District redevelopment. What's the timeline if that contract falls through? Falls through? It's practically approved. Why? Humor me. Well, if the primary bidder withdrew or was disqualified, we'd have to restart the process. Rebid. Probably 6 months minimum. The property would sit vacant another year. I made notes. 3 pages of them. By midnight, the picture was clear. Brandon Mitchell had overextended himself. The Historic District project was his anchor, the deal that would legitimize his company, provide capital for future development, establish him among Charleston's serious players. Without it, he'd be exposed, vulnerable. I sat back in my chair. The desk lamp cast long shadows across the blueprints pinned to my wall. Buildings I'd created over 4 decades, structures that would stand for generations. Tomorrow, I'd start building something different. Saturday morning arrived cold and bright. I drove through the Historic District toward my meeting with Patricia, taking the long route past the 5 buildings she'd mentioned on the phone. The restoration project Brandon wanted so badly. 19th century brick, ornate cornices, windows like empty eyes watching Charleston evolve without them. Beautiful bones, waiting for the right hands. I parked on a side street, fed the meter for 2 hours, walked the remaining block to the restoration room. The caf smelled like espresso and old wood, exposed brick walls, Edison bulbs, the kind of place where architects sketched on napkins and argued about cornice details. Patricia arrived exactly on time. She always did. Russell, she kissed my cheek, settled into the chair across from me. I'd already ordered her coffee, 2 creams, no sugar. How are you handling semi-retirement? Bored yet? Not particularly. The Trad Street project keeps me busy enough. We talked shop for 20 minutes. Her recent completion of a King Street renovation. My client who wanted modern amenities hidden behind historic facades. The delicate balance between preservation and practicality. Comfortable conversation between colleagues who'd served together on preservation boards, attended the same zoning hearings, fought the same battles against developers who saw Charleston as blank canvas instead of living history. Then I shifted gears, casual as I could manage. I've been hearing a name lately in development circles, Mitchell Properties. You know them? Patricia's posture straightened. Her coffee cup paused halfway to her lips. Brandon Mitchell? Yes, unfortunately. Why do you ask? Just curiosity. The name came up in conversation recently. She glanced around the cafe, then leaned forward, lowering her voice. I hope not in a positive context. That young man has concerning qualities. I waited, let the silence encourage her. He applied for our historic district restoration project. Initially impressive on paper, good portfolio, competitive bid. But then we started hearing things. What kind of things? Behavior issues, treating inspectors disrespectfully, aggressive with city officials. One of our board members witnessed him berating a contractor publicly. I sipped my coffee. That's troubling for someone handling historic properties. Historic properties require patience, respect for process. He seems to lack both. She set her cup down carefully. There's more. Kevin Parker, he's Mitchell's financial backer, expressed doubts after witnessing Brandon's behavior at a city planning meeting, dismissive toward inspectors, condescending about preservation requirements. Is he financially solid? Sometimes young developers overextend. Patricia's expression turned more serious. That's the concerning part. Word is his entire operation runs on a single bank loan, around $500,000. That's significant leverage for an unestablished company. And contingent on winning contracts. The bank apparently tied repayment terms to his success with our restoration project. I kept my face neutral. Inside, pieces clicked into place like joints in timber framing. When does your board decide? Wednesday afternoon. We have 5 qualified applicants now that Mitchell is losing favor. Losing favor? How quickly did that happen? Past 2 weeks. His reputation is spreading faster than he realizes. In our community, word travels. She checked her watch, gathered her bag. Russell, why the interest in Mitchell? This isn't your usual concern. I chose my words carefully. Let's just say I have personal reasons to understand who he really is. She studied my face for a long moment. Personal reasons, I see. Well, between professionals, he's not someone I'd trust with important projects or important people. I appreciate your candor, Patricia. Truly. After she left, I ordered a second coffee I wouldn't drink. Sat watching Charleston's Saturday morning unfold through the cafe window. A young couple argued on the sidewalk. An elderly man fed pigeons from a paper bag. Life continuing its ordinary rhythms, while I calculated trajectories and consequences. Finally, I stood, left cash on the table, walked back to my car. Instead of going home, I drove to the waterfront district, parked near the 5 buildings slated for restoration, got out, walked the perimeter of each structure. I'd done this 1,000 times, assessing buildings, imagining their futures, the weight distribution, the stress points, where to reinforce, where to rebuild, where to tear away what couldn't be saved. Now I was assessing Brandon's future, his structure. The buildings were magnificent, even in decay. Brick, the color of dried blood. Windows that had watched the Civil War. Reconstruction, integration, gentrification. They'd outlasted everyone who'd built them and everyone who'd tried to tear them down. Brandon would have rushed them, stripped what he could sell, covered the rest with cheap modern facades, called it progress. I pulled out my phone, took photos of each building, architectural details, cornices, lintels, the places where original craftsmanship still showed through decades of neglect, for later reference. The morning sun felt warm on my shoulders. Salt air drifted in from the harbor 2 blocks east. I stood there for 15 minutes, just looking, thinking. Then I got in my car and drove home to plan the next move. Monday morning, I called James Whitfield's office. His secretary put me through immediately. James, Russell Ross, I'm free for lunch today if you are. I have some investment questions. Always happy to talk business with you, Russell. Palmer's at noon? Perfect. Palmer's was a Charleston institution. White tablecloths, she-crab soup, discreet conversations over shrimp and grits. The kind of place where real business happened quietly, away from phones and emails and public record. I arrived early, claimed the back booth, ordered water, waited. James showed up promptly at noon, tablet tucked under his arm, handshake firm. We'd known each other 20 years. He'd financed half my major projects. Good banker, cautious, thorough. So, he said after we'd ordered investment opportunities, I'm thinking about legacy. What remains after my career ends? Considering significant investments in Charleston commercial properties. Perhaps partnering with developers on projects? He nodded, pulled up spreadsheets on his tablet. Market conditions are favorable. Interest rates holding steady. The historic district is particularly hot right now. We talked numbers for 30 minutes. Portfolio diversification, risk assessment, return projections, legitimate business discussion that laid groundwork for what came next. After our entirees arrived, I'd gotten the flounder, he'd gotten his usual shrimp and grits. I shifted direction. Speaking of developers, what's your assessment of the younger generation? Are they reliable partners? He considered this carefully. Mixed bag, honestly. Some are innovative, well capitalized. Others are overconfident and underprepared. How does one distinguish between them? Track record, references, but most importantly, how they treat people throughout the process. Character shows under pressure. I cut a piece of fish, chewed, swallowed. My daughter mentioned a company, Mitchell Properties. You know them? James's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. He set it down slowly, looked at me directly. Why do you ask? Brandon Mitchell was engaged to Sarah. Was engaged. Past tense as of Thursday. His expression shifted to concern. Russell, I need to be cautious about client confidentiality, but if your daughter is involved with Mitchell personally, you should know there are professional concerns. What kind of concerns? He chose his words carefully. Reports from contractors about hostile interactions. Inspectors filing complaints. The pattern is consistent across multiple sources. What happened Thursday, if you're comfortable sharing? I set down my own fork, looked at him steadily. He didn't recognize me, or chose not to. Saw an older man in work clothes and decided I was someone he could push around. Literally push. He put hands on you, shoved me against a car, called me an old fool, told me to leave before he called security, on a residential street, at my own home. James sat back, his lunch forgotten. I'm sorry that happened, and I appreciate you sharing it. This aligns with reports we've received, but having testimony from someone I've known 20 years, that carries weight. Does this affect his loan standing? It affects everything. Banks don't just finance projects, we finance people. Character is collateral. If someone treats strangers with contempt, how will they handle financial pressure? That's a reasonable assessment. He was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then, Wednesday's board meeting may have bearing on our relationship with Mitchell Properties. Wednesday, that's the historic restoration decision. Among other things, I'll be in attendance. I picked up my fork again, took another bite of fish. Let him process. Russell, thank you for this conversation. What you've shared is valuable. It provides context for decisions we're already evaluating. I'm simply sharing facts. What the bank does with them is your business. Facts matter. Character matters. He signaled for the check. I have a 2 o'clock. but I'm glad we did this. We shook hands at the door. Warm, genuine, professional. After he left, I sat back down, ordered coffee I didn't need, watched the lunch crowd thin. Monday afternoon light slanted through Palmer's tall windows, catching dust motes in gold shafts. I'd set something in motion now. Not lies, not manipulation, just truth flowing into channels where it carried consequence. Finally, I paid, cash, generous tip, and walked out into Charleston's December sunshine. In my car, I checked my phone. A text from Sarah. How did lunch go? I typed back. Productive. 2 days until Wednesday. 2 days for truth to circulate through Charleston's professional community, that tight network where reputation is currency and word travels at the speed of a shared lunch, a confidential phone call, a quiet conversation in the right ears. I started the engine and drove toward home, where my workshop waited, where architectural plans lined the walls, reminding me that I'd spent 40 years understanding how structures hold together and how they fall apart. Tuesday morning, Patricia Coleman found an envelope on her desk. Plain white, no return address, delivered by courier sometime overnight. Inside, 3 typed pages. She read them standing at her desk, coffee cooling in her other hand. The letter identified its author only as a subcontractor who worked under Mitchell Properties, and detailed Brandon's behavior on a September renovation project. Verbal abuse toward workers, unreasonable demands, refusal to pay overtime, a pattern of blaming others for timeline failures. The closing paragraph made her sit down. I stayed silent because I needed the work, but I've heard Mr. Mitchell is being considered for the Historic District project. Those buildings deserve better. Those workers deserve better. Patricia read it twice more, then buzzed her assistant. Pull the complete Mitchell Properties file, everything. By noon, she'd made 6 phone calls. The project's property owner. Young man had an attitude problem. We were glad when it finished. A contractor who'd worked the job. Payment was late. Attitude was worse. I wouldn't work for him again. Each call confirmed another detail from the anonymous letter. At 12:15, she added a note to Mitchell's application file. Additional review required before Wednesday board meeting. That afternoon, I called Richard Shaw about a minor question regarding an old project. At least, that's what I said when his wife transferred me to his home office. Russell, always good to hear from you. What's on your mind? We talked about the Broad Street renovation we'd collaborated on 5 years ago, his golf game, my semi-retirement, the rhythm of old colleagues catching up. Then casually, I heard there might be some concerns about one of the restoration applicants, professionalism issues. Mitchell Properties, I think? Just rumors, probably. Silence on the line. Then, not rumors, Russell. We're looking into specifics now. Where did you hear this? You know how our community talks. I'm sure the board will make the right decision. Russell, he paused. Why are you asking about Mitchell? Just curious. Historic properties need careful stewardship and good character. Another pause. They do. The board takes that seriously. After we hung up, I sat in my study watching afternoon light move across the floor. Same room where Sarah had asked to bring Brandon to Thanksgiving. 10 days ago. Felt like longer. At 4:30, my phone buzzed. Sarah. Brandon showed up at my office. Meeting him now. We'll call later. I texted back. Be safe. You don't owe him anything. She was at her law firm, Glass and Steel Tower downtown, where she made junior partner last year. When Brandon appeared unannounced, reception had called her extension. Mr. Mitchell is here to see you. She could have refused. Should have, probably. Instead, she agreed to meet in conference room C, glass walls, visible to the entire office. No privacy for manipulation. Brandon looked terrible. She told me this later, over dinner at my house. Suit wrinkled, eyes red-rimmed, several days stubble. He wasn't sleeping. He'd brought roses, expensive ones, hastily purchased, left them on the conference table between them. His apology came tumbling out. Dark lighting, work stress, terrible mistake, never meant to hurt anyone, especially her father. If only she'd give him another chance. He'd prove himself. They could work through this together. Sarah sat perfectly still, hands folded, lawyer mode. Let him exhaust himself. When he finished, she asked one question. If he actually had been maintenance staff, would that have been acceptable? Brandon's mouth opened, closed. That's different. Context matters. How is it different? Explain to me how pushing and insulting someone is acceptable in any context. I was protecting your car. I thought, let me ask directly. If that man had been maintenance staff, would your behavior have been justified? No, but no qualifications. Yes or no? Would it have been acceptable? He looked down at the table. No. Then why did you do it? I don't know. I wasn't thinking. Sarah stood. We're suspending the engagement. I need time to think about who I'm committing my life to. Suspending? Sarah, we can work through this. You need to work through this. Figure out why you think it's acceptable to treat people that way. Until you do, we have nothing further to discuss. How long? A week? A month? As long as it takes. Or forever. That's up to you. She walked out first, leaving him in that glass box, visible to everyone. Alone. The roses stayed on the table. By closing time, the petals were already browning. Sarah came to my house that evening. We ordered takeout, Thai food, her favorite, and ate in the kitchen. She recounted the conversation without emotion, clinical as a case summary. I'm done, she said finally. Even if he changes, even if he apologizes perfectly, I've seen who he is underneath. You can't unsee that. No, I agreed. You can't. She left around 9. I cleaned up, threw away the containers, stood at my kitchen sink looking out at the dark backyard. Tomorrow was Wednesday, board meeting day. I went to bed early but didn't sleep much. Just lay there thinking about structures, how they hold weight, how they distribute stress, how they fail when the foundation proves unsound. By morning, everything would shift. The board met at 2 o'clock Wednesday afternoon in City Hall's conference room. Patricia presented findings on 5 applications, moving through them systematically. When Mitchell Properties came up, she kept her voice neutral. Facts only. Initially promising submission, competitive bid. However, subsequent investigation revealed timeline violations on previous projects and multiple complaints regarding unprofessional conduct toward workers and inspectors. A board member asked, serious enough to disqualify? The committee believes historic preservation requires technical competence and professional reliability, respect for process, respect for people. James Whitfield sat in the back row, present as bank observer. He said nothing, just took notes. The vote was quick, unanimous. Mitchell Properties eliminated. Rejection letters went out at 5. Brandon sat in his office, rented suite in a business park, barely furnished, watching his email. 2 rooms, desk, filing cabinet, pictures of project renderings on walls that weren't his. At 5:07 p.m., the message arrived. Subject line, application decision, Historic District Restoration Project. His hands shook, opening it. Professional language, courteous, regretful. Thank you for your interest. After careful consideration, not selected at this time. Then the sentence that mattered. The board had concerns regarding insufficient experience for projects of this scope and questionable recommendations regarding professional conduct. He read it 4 times. The words didn't change. He called Kevin Parker immediately. His partner answered on the first ring. Brandon, I assume you got the news. Kevin, we can fix this. One contract doesn't define a company. It's not the contract. It's you. I heard about Thanksgiving. I heard about how you treat contractors. I've seen how you handle criticism. Those are exaggerations, misunderstandings. I don't invest in misunderstandings. I invest in character. Yours is a liability. I'm out. But without your investment, that's your problem now. Mine is over. The call ended. Brandon tried calling back. Voicemail. Again. Voicemail. Kevin had blocked him. Brandon looked around his office. All rented, all temporary. Without the contract, without Kevin's investment, even this disappeared. He sat for 20 minutes, staring at nothing. Then desperation overtook shock. Russell had connections, influence. If Sarah asked him, if somehow, maybe there was still a way to salvage this. He called Sarah, voicemail, texted. No response. Finally, he drove to Russell's house, arriving as December dusk settled over Charleston. 6:30. The street lamps were just coming on. He parked at the curb, same curb where he'd pushed Russell 6 days ago. The irony didn't register. Walked up the brick path, climbed the porch steps, rang the bell. Russell answered immediately, unsurprised, like he'd been waiting. They stood at the threshold, Brandon on the porch, Russell blocking the doorway. Russell, please, I need to talk with you. There's been a terrible mistake with the board decision. No mistake. Come in. No. We'll talk here. If you could just speak to someone, use your connections, explain that Thursday was... Explain what? That you push people you consider beneath you? That you call strangers fools? I apologized. I made a mistake. No. You revealed yourself. Russell's voice was calm, cold. This old fool has 35 years of experience in Charleston, a reputation built on respect. You have what? Ambition? Contempt for people you think don't matter? Brandon's face changed, understanding arriving slowly, then all at once. You did this. The board, the contract, you. I did nothing. I simply let people know who you really are. Your reputation destroyed itself. Please, I'm losing everything. The business, the loan, Sarah. Everything. You lost Sarah when you showed her who you are. You lost the contract when your character became known. You lost your partner when he realized the risk. Consequences, Brandon. Not bad luck. Consequences. What am I supposed to do now? Russell stepped back, hand on the door. Learn. Grow. Become someone different. But not here. Not with my daughter. Not in my city. The door closed. Brandon stood on the porch for a full minute, then walked back to his car, sat in the driver's seat without starting the engine. Through Russell's study window, he could see light, life continuing normally while his disintegrated. Finally, he started the car and drove, aimlessly, through Charleston's streets, past the historic buildings he'd never renovate, through neighborhoods where his reputation now preceded him. His phone buzzed, email notification, Charleston Regional Bank, subject line, loan status review required. He didn't open it, not yet, just kept driving as night settled fully, streetlights blurring past, going nowhere because there was nowhere left to go. Thursday morning, certified mail arrived at Brandon's apartment. Charleston Regional Bank. Official letterhead. He opened it standing in what used to be his office. Now just an empty room with rental furniture he'd soon abandon. The language was formal, legal, devastating. Pursuant to Loan Agreement Section 7.3, failure to secure the historic district restoration contract triggers immediate repayment clause. Full amount of $450,000 due within 30 calendar days. He sat heavily in his desk chair, read it again, then checked his bank accounts on his laptop. Personal, $12,047. Business, $4,023. He needed $500,000. He had $17,000. The mathematics of disaster. The week that followed was humiliation in slow motion. He called a used furniture dealer, accepted an insulting offer because he had no choice. $4,000 for equipment that cost $12,000 6 months ago. Used office furniture depreciates fast, the dealer said, inspecting Russell's drafting tables. Plus, you need cash today. That changes the price. Brandon watched movers carry everything out. The desk where he'd planned his empire, the computers where he'd drafted proposals, all gone for pennies on the dollar. A contractor he'd worked with bought his truck, counted out cash slowly, deliberately, knowing he had Brandon trapped. Business not working out? The man smiled. Brandon didn't answer. By the following Friday, he'd raised $83,000. Selling everything, equipment, vehicles, even his personal BMW went on the market. His apartment furniture followed, still short by more than $300,000. That same Friday afternoon, Patricia Coleman called Russell. He was in his garden, pruning roses, finding comfort in physical work. Russell, I heard the most disturbing thing. Apparently that incident on Thanksgiving. Someone witnessed it and has been talking. Russell straightened, concerned. Who? Mr. Henderson, your neighbor across the street. He told his contractor grandson, who told colleagues. The story is everywhere now. 3 contractors mentioned it to me this week alone. Russell was quiet. He hadn't spread this, hadn't needed to. People are saying you handled it with remarkable restraint, Patricia continued, that you didn't press charges, didn't make a scene, that the young man destroyed himself. I didn't want it to become gossip. It's not gossip when it's truth. It's warning. You've actually done the community a service. After they hung up, Russell sat on his garden bench, looking at the roses he'd just trimmed. Truth had its own momentum. He'd simply removed obstacles and let it flow. Saturday afternoon, a courier arrived at Brandon's apartment. Envelope from Sarah's law firm. Inside, the engagement ring in its original box, and a letter on professional letterhead. This letter serves as official notice that our engagement is permanently dissolved. I am returning your ring. Please do not contact me further. Professional, cold, final. Brandon stared at the ring. $35,000 he couldn't recoup. He set it on his kitchen counter, the apartment mostly empty now, furniture sold to make rent. And for the first time since this began, he cried, not from anger, from understanding what he'd lost and why. That evening, Sarah came to Russell's house. They sat in his study, the same room where she'd asked to bring Brandon to Thanksgiving 2 weeks ago. Dad, you showed me who he really was before I married him, before children, before years invested. You saved me. Russell felt uncomfortable with the gratitude. I didn't do this for revenge, Sarah. I just let the truth be known. She shook her head. You did exactly what needed doing. You trusted that the truth would be enough. And it was. They shared wine in comfortable silence. Outside, December evening settled softly over Charleston's historic district. Do you feel vindicated? She asked. I feel quiet. Like when a building project finishes and you see it standing properly. Everything in its right place. Justice feels quiet. Real justice does. It's not dramatic. It's just right. Things as they should be. Later, after Sarah left, Russell stood at his study window, the same window where he'd watched her drive away that first Saturday, worried and tense about bringing Brandon to dinner. Now she was free. The danger had passed. He turned off the light and headed upstairs, the house settling into peaceful darkness around him. 3 weeks after Thanksgiving, Brandon appeared at Russell's door one final time. Russell saw him through the window before answering, a different man from before. Thinner, wearing ordinary clothes, the expensive suits sold, driving a 10-year-old sedan that replaced his BMW. Russell opened the door. Mr. Ross, Brandon's voice was quiet. May I have 5 minutes? Russell studied him for a moment, then stepped onto the porch, closing the door behind him. They'd talk, but not inside. Some boundaries remained. I came to apologize. Really apologize this time. Russell waited. I don't expect anything. I know everything's gone. The business, Sarah, my reputation. But you deserve to hear this. Brandon's hands stayed at his sides. I acted like an arrogant fool. I treated people terribly because I thought I was better than them. Go on. You called me out. The whole city did. And everyone was right. I looked down on people, dismissed them. I called you an old fool, but the real fool was me all along. Russell listened without interrupting, watching Brandon's face in the porch light. I accept your apology, Brandon, not for your benefit, for mine. Holding anger serves no purpose. Thank you for even listening. What happened wasn't revenge. It was consequence. You built your life on contempt for others. That foundation couldn't hold. I see that now. Too late. Maybe not too late to learn. Just too late for us. Your work is elsewhere now. Brandon nodded slowly. Did you plan all this? The contract, the bank, everything? I planned nothing. I let people know who you were. The rest followed naturally. Understanding crossed Brandon's face. The old fool knew exactly what he was doing. This old fool knows about foundations. Yours was weak. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Brandon extended his hand. Russell shook it. Brief, formal, final. Brandon walked down the brick path, got into his old sedan, and drove away. Russell watched until the taillights disappeared, then went inside. An hour later, Sarah arrived with Thai takeout, their Wednesday dinner tradition restored after 2 weeks' hiatus. Pad Thai and Panang curry, she announced, setting bags on the kitchen table. And spring rolls? They ate in comfortable rhythm, talking about normal things, her current case, his upcoming consultation on a Battery Street renovation, neighborhood news. I've been seeing Andrew, she said, reaching for a spring roll. The attorney I mentioned. How's that going? Good, really good. He's kind to everyone. I watched him help a lost intern find the copy room yesterday. Didn't have to, wasn't his job, just did it. Character shows in small moments. You taught me that. Finally learned the lesson. After dinner, they moved to his second-floor balcony. Charleston spread below them, city lights twinkling in December darkness. Cool evening air, perfect for a few minutes outside. They stood side by side at the railing, not needing to fill silence with words. Brandon came by earlier, Russell said. Apologized. Sarah looked at him. And I accepted it. For myself, not for him. What happened needed to happen. Are you glad it's over? Glad isn't the word. Relieved, maybe. Justice served. You never wanted revenge, did you? Just protection. Protection for you. Justice for me. Same thing, in the end. Sarah leaned against the railing. Below, the historic district glowed softly. Buildings Russell had helped preserve. Streets he'd walked for 35 years. The community that had served him when truth needed telling. Thank you, Dad, for seeing clearly when I couldn't. That's what fathers do. We hold the light steady. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, smiled. Andrew, asking about my day. Russell watched her face in the screen's light and saw his daughter, truly his daughter, not someone's deceived fiancé, not a woman making excuses for cruelty, just Sarah, happy, safe, free. Ready to go inside? She asked. It's getting cold. Russell took one last look at the city below, the buildings standing because their foundations were solid, the streets enduring because they were built to last. Like values, like family, like truth. Yes, he said, let's go in. They walked inside together, closing the balcony door behind them, leaving the past out in the December night where it belonged. Inside, the house was warm. Justice was done. Life continued, and that was enough. If you liked this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.